And there's a perception, whether it's true or not, that she's going to get favorable treatment or may get favorable treatment in assignments or in duties, that he might have some pull over that. And you will hear testimony that there were employees who believed that that was true. Other employees that wanted to work for Mr. Gardner in the investigative unit who were applying and vying for that job felt like she had an advantage because she worked with them all the time on investigations. And that's a problem for an organization. You will also hear testimony from Chief Sweat that he too saw enough between the two of them that he decided he better ask Captain Gardner if there was something going on, something inappropriate going on. And he did. He asked him that question. And he will tell you that it was about sometime probably in 2011, maybe a little before, that he had called him into his office and he said, "Are you having an intimate relationship or a romantic relationship with Kara Gittner?" And Captain Gardner told him no. And the testimony that you will hear is that Captain Gardner told him no because at that exact moment they were off. They were not engaged in their affair at that moment that he was asked the question. So whether he actually lied at that moment or misled his superior officer or his boss, he wasn't forthright with Chief Sweat. He did not tell Chief Sweat that he'd been having a relationship with her, and when the relationship resumed, he did not tell him that it had resumed. His office was right down the hall from Chief Sweat's. He saw him on a daily basis. The testimony from Chief Sweat will be that he was in his office every day, talked to him every day. But Captain Gardner felt that that wasn't information he needed to share with Chief Sweat, and that's one of the bases for his termination, that he was not forthright with his superior. During the time period of August 2011, apparently there was some disharmony, I guess, in the relationship between Captain Gardner and Miss Gittner. And about 1 in the morning on August the 7th, they were involved. You'll hear testimony that they were arguing over the phone. And at some point, she asked him to come and get her guns because she wanted to quit. She didn't want to work there anymore. And he was the acting deputy chief when that happened that weekend. And the testimony will be that he went to her house, that she was crying, angry, upset. He knew that she had been treated for depression, that she saw a psychologist fairly regularly for depression. And he took her guns. He went into her house, to the room where she kept her service weapon and her personal weapon, and he took them. And he didn't tell anyone about that. He didn't tell his supervisor. He didn't write a report. The next morning she called and said, "I'm better. I want my guns. I got to go back to work." He didn't determine whether she was fit for duty, whether she was fit to carry a gun, whether she was depressed and shouldn't have a gun. He didn't do anything. He didn't tell anybody. He didn't write a report. He returned the guns to her, and life went on. And life went on that week with Mr. Gardner, and he began an affair with a trainee named Paige Winters that week of August the 8th, 2011. Ms. Winters also was a lifeguard at one point, had just become a law enforcement officer. I believe she was sworn in July of 2011. She was on probation. She was a trainee. He initiated an affair with her. Again, it was mutual, consensual, not on county time, but not appropriate on the county's position. That relationship lasted about 2 weeks to a month, depending on whose testimony you believe. But, and then this all came to light. An internal investigation was begun based on some anonymous allegations about Captain Gardner and others. And that began the process that you're here to consider today. What happened during that process is there was a changing of the guard. The previous director of public protection did the notice of intent to terminate. He then left public protection, went back to the sheriff's office where he had previously been employed. And Mr. Reichenwald was appointed as the director, or the acting director of public protection. And what happened when that happened was you had a new pair of eyes, a person that never been involved with the beach before or any of the people, didn't know Mr. Gardner. I don't think he met Mr. Gardner even until today, if he's even met him yet. But he was given the entire internal investigation, all of the sworn statements, all of the evidence that had been provided to Mr. Gardner as well, to review and make the decision on the final action to be taken in this matter. and you will hear from Mr. Rechtenwald that after he reviewed all of the evidence and all of the statements, he came to the conclusion that Mr. Gardner had shown such poor judgment in his handling of his personal affairs, in having affairs with subordinates, not that he had affairs, but that he had an affair with two subordinates who were trainees at the time, that his judgment was clearly clouded by those relationships, that he showed, whether he showed favoritism to Officer Gittner or not, it was perceived by others in the organization, which is very bad for the morale of the organization. His handling of the gun incident, whether he thought he should report that she was distraught and told him to take her guns or not, that really wasn't his call at the level in the organization that he was. As a law enforcement officer, he had an obligation to tell someone, even if it was just his immediate supervisor. One thing I failed to mention during, as I've been talking to you, is that during the internal investigation, Mr. Gardner was given an order by Deputy Director Joe Pozo to provide his cell phone records. And the cell phone records that he was asked or ordered to provide were solely phone calls between he and Kara Gittner and Paige Winters during work hours. So the order was not, give us all your cell phones so we can know all of your personal business. The order was very specific. Provide us your cell phone records. And that order was given based on things that were discovered during the investigation to try to determine whether or not there were things going on county time that shouldn't have been. Mr. Gardner chose not to produce those records. That is one factor that was considered by Mr. Rechtenwald in the decision to terminate, that he was insubordinate in refusing a direct order, lawful order to produce those records. So I just want to mention that that was one additional grounds for the termination. You have the termination letter. It's very clear why Mr. Gardner was terminated. We believe the evidence will support everything that you've seen in this letter. And at the conclusion of the hearing, we will ask you to uphold this termination. Thank you.